Well, this section of the John Muir Way, we're right, you can't see it here, but we're right on the foreshore. It's a really narrow section of the John Muir Way with industry on the other side of us. From the point of view of biodiversity, it's a really important corridor linking other sites either end of it. But it's really important that we make that corridor as attractive as possible to wildlife so they can move through it easily. So as you can see, there's real potential here to enhance it and improve it. So we'd love to put in more hedging, more sort of shrubs, just to create a more attractive habitat corridor so wildlife can move easily up and down. And obviously that has the benefit of providing more greenery and natural space for people using the path as well. So hopefully it's a win-win because it will make it a more attractive space and will help to screen some of the industry that's right next to us on this site. So this is a real priority for us to try and enhance this site. Well, this part of the John Muir Way, we're lucky that we've got some really fantastic wildlife sites on it, like sort of stepping stones on it. But it's important for wildlife, for birds, for mammals, invertebrates, even plants to be able to sort of move between those sites rather than getting isolated in little sites. So sites like this are really important for that. And if we can increase the variety of cover, increase the variety of habitat, more things will feel comfortable using this little narrow strip of green space to get from one of those ecologically rich sites to the next one. Heading east, you're heading towards sort of Blackness and the foreshore around Blackness, which is a beautiful area of estuary and shoreline and has some nice green spaces. And beyond that, you're into sort of Hopeton Estate with their lovely greenery and woodland there. And in the other direction, not far up here, we've got areas of urban green space where we've created meadow areas, where we've got woodland, where we've got much bigger open spaces. So they're important. And also, and it comes with the sort of industrial background here, we have some really interesting brownfield sites. So sites that used to be old shipbreakers' yards, really industrial sites that have now naturally greened up and have a really interesting mixture of bare ground and rubble and foreshore plants and plants that are found in those sort of post-industrial sites, and are actually fantastic for biodiversity and for invertebrates. So that we've got all these stepping stones and bits like this that are vital to join them up. And we've got so many things we would love them to be doing. So I guess we can split it between those sites that we know are already ecologically rich sites, but that need looking after and improving. So for example, our brownfield site just up the path here will need management to control invasive species, to make sure we continue to have the sort of bare ground and the rubble habitat that's so important. So that sort of work is vital. And then we've got other sites like meadows where we need to do annual management and enhancement just to keep those sites healthy and ecologically rich. And then of course there's the linking bits like this, and in a way they're where there's some of the biggest opportunities to do enhancements, because by putting in lines of trees, by planting hedgerows, by maybe putting in wildflower plug plants in verges that aren't very diverse at the moment, they can help create these linkages between all the existing ecologically rich sites to give us a really good habitat corridor along the John Muir Way. I guess it's different invasive species in different places. So where the route is going through some of our woodlands, rhododendron is a real problem and is really shading out what would be nice woodland ground flora. In areas like this, the sort of post-industrial sites that we want to keep as brownfield habitat, we can have problems with gorse and broom and that sort of stuff. I guess there's Japanese knotweed in some places and giant hogweed, and again that's an annual thing, so having a team that's able to return year on year to tackle those is really vital. And on the foreshore, along this bit of the foreshore, we have a real issue with sea buckthorn, which was actually planted as part of landscaping schemes, but is just a a bit too efficient really at spreading, and we'll take over from all the sort of native scrub. So there's a big job there to just year on year be trying to remove that and gradually replace it with native shrub species. So there's a fair bit to be done. Yeah, absolutely. There's lots of jobs that they'll need to do which will be seasonal and which we can anticipate in advance and sort of program in advance almost, which is useful. So some of the invasive species control, it's about getting in there before it seeds. So it might be May, June, July time that you're having to do that. Obviously tree planting and hedge planting is a winter job. Scrub removal, you'd be looking at autumn so that you miss the bird breeding season. So all of these we can sort of anticipate in advance and put together a nice annual programme that identifies where in the year you'd be doing these different jobs. I mean, we have, and I think it's probably true for other local authority areas along the John Muir Way as well, we have really strong working partnerships with lots of different organisations working in land management and conservation, and we're often working in partnership with them on projects. And I think it would be fantastic if these young people could start being introduced to all these other people working in that area, finding out what they're doing and what their priorities are and how they work, and just getting a feel for the bigger picture. And I'm sure there are lots of partners out there who would be happy to support that. I mean, from the other side of it, working with those partners and trying to manage land myself, there's a real skills gap in terms of conservation work, and we often struggle to find contractors with staff who are familiar with some of the environmental work we want them to do and some of the considerations they need to think about when they're working on sort of conservation sites. And I know other partners are finding that too, that it can be a challenge to get suitably qualified or experienced contractors to do work. So there's an opportunity there, I think, to start talking to each other and for these young people to, be able to share with the other partners what they have learned and their experiences as well. Yeah, and there's lots of community groups. I mean, there are ones that are already really active, either with a specific site or in a particular area. And obviously they could link in with those groups and see how work might overlap and help them. I guess there are also community groups that are maybe a little bit less active, but are maybe going to be in an area where the trainees are going to be working. And it would be great if those young people could maybe engage with perhaps groups who are using some of the green spaces that they're on, so sports groups or recreational groups. And they may have the ability and the rapport to engage with community groups that we haven't particularly done very much work with. So in a way it would be really interesting to see which groups they had a sort of natural affinity with or wanted to work with, and it could be from sort of wee kids up to sort of adult groups. But there's a huge appetite out there at the moment for communities to get involved in enhancing their green spaces, so I'm sure they would be able to find opportunities. Absolutely. I mean, we have refugees temporarily housed within Falkirk, very close to Calendar Park. Young men who I think it would be really amazing to be able to sort of offer them the opportunity to come and learn more about the green spaces that are around where their current home is, and have the opportunity to work with the young trainees to sort of do positive action in those sites. So that would be a real opportunity. But in all of the communities that the John Muir Way passes through, there will be groups who maybe find it more difficult to access the green spaces and the John Muir Way, or who maybe just need a bit of encouragement to come out and discover what's there and get involved. I think it's well worth a try. I mean, we've had the Zetland Park project in Grangemouth, which has been a really high profile park enhancement project, and some of the corporate interest within that area and businesses within Grangemouth have been very engaged with that project. So there may already be links there that you can use to contact these groups. But a lot of the industry in Grangemouth are very aware of the sort of climate crisis, the biodiversity crisis, and the need to sort of bear that in mind in terms of their sort of corporate social responsibility. Yeah, well, no, that's really interesting, because Falkirk Council, we've been working over the last couple of years to try and make the way we manage our green spaces better for the environment and for the climate, as well as for local communities and health and well-being. So we have been doing a project to change areas of amenity grass to long grass, to meadows, to woodlands, to wetlands, and we have started, and it's complicated, we've started trying to measure the difference in terms of carbon sequestration that you get when you, as opposed from comparing amenity grassland with, say, natural long grassland or with woodland. So we've started doing that process, and it is quite complicated, but it would be great to extend that. And the other sort of major climate benefit is not just the carbon sequestration, but making spaces more resilient so that they can cope with really hot temperatures, they can cope with more extreme rainfall and just be that much more resilient to it. I guess if we're looking at woodland creation or hedgerow creation, you're creating shade and more sheltered areas that are great for wildlife. They're also great for people who, you know, will naturally look for more shaded areas to enjoy when there's really hot temperatures. I mean, we've also found in areas where we've converted very short grass to meadow grass that the vegetation itself is just more resilient and is less likely to get parched, which means all the beasties and wildlife in the vegetation has just got a slightly cooler environment and slightly damper environment and isn't going to be struggling quite so much in hot weather. I mean, I think where we're looking at the sort of corridors connecting existing environmentally rich sites, we'd like to look at hedgerows, but within those hedgerows I would definitely like to look at hedgerow trees and tree planting. So the more trees we can get in, the better. It's just finding the right tree in the right place to do that. I mean, one of the issues we're finding is that when we want to do tree planting or we want to create a wetland, we can usually find contractors to do that, but they will have little or no background in terms of environmental enhancements or conservation. So they need a lot of hand-holding in terms of, well, what do we want to achieve? What do we want it to look like? It needs to be, you know, so for example, a pond, we're looking for lots of wiggly edges and varied heights, and you'll get a pond contractor looking for a very neat circle. And it's that sort of mismatch between what we're trying to achieve at the moment, which makes it very difficult to find a contractor that you can just say, get on and do this. I think it is a cultural thing, and I think until recently, a lot of the people who are doing work for us in the conservation sector are contractors who have come from a background of agriculture or landscaping, where their aims are different and they are looking for tidiness or they are looking for maximum output. I think that's beginning to change, and I think with growing demand from ourselves and other partners for these sort of conservation projects, there's work out there for people to do. I think it's beginning to change, but it would be so valuable if these young people could enter that workforce with a really good understanding and appreciation of the sorts of things that we're looking for in terms of really good biodiversity outputs and projects that are really beneficial for the climate as well as for people. And I think it's having that knowledge and expertise, but it's also just having that appreciation of, you know, what does a good project look like to benefit biodiversity. I mean, I think there's the skills in terms of the machinery and tools that they might need to be using. So the hard skills of being able to use a brush cutter and a strimmer properly, and being able to do works on shrubs, being able to plant things properly and look after them so that they thrive, that sort of stuff. I think as well as that, the skill of being able to meet a potential client or employer on site and discuss with them, well, what is it you're trying to achieve, and to sort of understand that and interpret that into, well, this is what we're going to do. That's really important. And linked to that, the sort of knowledge of what are the sorts of things I need to consider before I crack on and dig the hole for the pond or plant the trees. And it's that, is it the bird breeding season? Do I need to check for protected species? Do I need to speak to this organisation to check that I'm not going to be interfering with a particularly sensitive part of the site? And it's those sorts of skills that would be invaluable when you then go and approach a contractor and say, this is what we want to do. So it's that understanding. I guess the one thing I would say is that there's increasing work looking at nature networks, both locally and across the whole of Scotland. So we're already looking at how we manage and connect sites in our area to create nature networks. And the John Muir Way is a perfect example of a nature network, and if we can enhance it and make it more connected, fabulous. And I think in terms of engaging our local trainees, it's really positive that they can come and work on sites that are very local to them and see that they can have a really positive impact on their local environment and their local community. But at the same time, they can see that that's part of this much bigger picture. So what they're doing locally is also part of this regional nature network and this Scottish-wide nature network. So actually, the work that they're doing, you know, has ramifications in this much bigger picture, and they can see that they're actively impacting on a Scotland-wide biodiversity initiative. And I think that's really exciting that these young people can see that, you know, they can affect positive change locally, but also at this sort of national level. And that, in a sense, that's as valuable a skill or an achievement as learning to use a brush cutter, that if you're then moving into employment with that mindset of I am empowered and I can make a difference, and it's important that when whatever I'm doing, I am able to make a positive impact. I mean, I think that's a fabulous lesson. So even if that was the only thing they go away with, which I know it won't be, that would be fabulous.